Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and you all know how much I love entrepreneurs that are making the world a better place. And I think what's really cool about entrepreneurship is that we can do that on a huge scale. We can do it on our local scale. We can do it in niches. We can do it in so many different ways. And today's guest and fellow entrepreneur is such a shining example of what it looks like to make the world a better place. So let me introduce you to him. His name is Brandon Pankey. Brandon is a board certified master arborist. He's a tree risk assessment qualified arborist. He's a certified tree care safety professional and so much more, which I feel like even just from those labels, you can tell that Brandon cares about trees. And you're going to see how he's embarked on an entrepreneurial journey that makes the world better through care for trees. He's been in the industry the majority of his life, having worked around trees since his youth on their family forestry in eastern Washington. His wife, their two, soon to be three daughters, and him lead their small company in east central Minnesota with a desire to serve rural communities with ethical tree care and to help preserve urban forests in areas where they're dissipating the fastest. There's so much food for thought in today's conversation. We're going to learn a lot, and Brandon has such an interesting story and most importantly, a mission of service. And I think that's something we can all borrow and implement in our own businesses and especially in our own lives. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Brandon Pankey. All right, Brandon, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Happy to be here.
Heck yes, I'm really excited to hear your story. Everything that I found about your business, it's so cool how mission driven you are and how impactful the work that you do is. So before we geek out about your business, you've got to take us beyond the bio. Who's Brandon? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, so I am a dad first and foremost and a husband. I've like you said in the intro, I've been in the tree care industry most of my life. I grew up on a forestry in eastern Washington partially. My grandparents had a couple hundred acres that we actively stewarded. So we were part of a stewardship program, and it just taught me a love for trees. And in my early teens, pretty well needed to eat, and tree care was just there. It was something that I fell into. I figured maybe it would pay for college and help me get through some rough patches, and it just stuck with me. I ended up doing tree care all over the country, and we ended up in Minnesota about 3 years ago and kind of fell into starting this company as well. Outside of just tree work, I like to turn wrenches. I am a little bit into music and stuff, but I mean, a lot of, as a parent and businessman, I mean, a lot of your time ends up going to your family.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, I want to talk about your business because I think it's so cool. You talk about falling into it, but I'm going to give you way more credit there about the fact that you were super intentional. And obviously it's something that you know for most of your life. It's something that you care about. It's something that you have a mission there. But I always believe that we need to applaud entrepreneurs that actually say, no, I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to take action. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to put myself in the arena. And obviously as the founder of Blue Pine Works, there's so much work that goes into it. So share with listeners more about your company, what that looked like to make that decision to actually start it, and really what the impact is from there.
Yeah, so I guess about 2013 or so, I had started a small company so I could travel around and do contract work, and it wasn't quite entrepreneurship. I mean, it was glorified self-employment, and over time, especially during COVID, that pretty well fizzled out. I mean, the scale of economy changed, and I ended up transitioning into a mechanical field. And we got headhunted for a position to come out to Minnesota. And so we picked up and moved out here. And some things didn't work out with that job, but we were here, and we had a lot of people that figured out who I was and what my credentialing was. And they said, hey, you should start a business. And I had some side work. It picked up. Needed to pay taxes, needed to have licensure and insurance, and it just kept growing from there. And I mean, it's just exploded. It's it started out as just a way to serve, my local community in a way that hadn't been served, and it's blown up to a pretty big radius and a few employees and good equipment and all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear about that story, especially because you called something out, and I think it's such an important distinction. I'm glad we're talking about this on the air together, is sometimes we start businesses that are really, you call it glorified self-employment. I think it's such a really great way to articulate that. We essentially just give ourselves another job, and that's obviously very different from starting that business. You've alluded to the fact that obviously hiring team members, having equipment, there's so much that goes into it, but also you alluded to the less sexy parts of entrepreneurship, which is you got to figure out taxes, you got to figure out accounting and finance, you got to figure out contracts and sales and revenue and all of these other things. Brandon, what did that transition look like for you?
Oh, it was a few years in the making. Over at the beginning of COVID, my wife and I actually started an architecture and an engineering degree. And through COVID, schools changed their policies and we couldn't finish those degrees. So she transitioned into marketing and I transitioned into business because that's just what we could do. So when we started this business, we were both kind of unconsciously incompetent about like what the big scale of business looks like, but we were really competent in our niche areas that school taught us. And that was like bookkeeping and hey, there's these certain paperwork things that had to happen to make it work. And once that paperwork was done, it was a lot less scary. And we were like, wait, this can just go anywhere. All we got to do is show up.
I've got to ask you this then, Brandon, because I think something that's fascinating that happens in an entrepreneurial transition is you go from being a practitioner to now being a business owner. And that's a real tangible shift that happens, not only in responsibilities and duties, but also inside of our minds. We have to take on that different role. Being an arborist is one thing, and having those skills and talents and abilities is one thing, but as a business owner, you're not just an arborist anymore. You're all of these different things. Where along the way, I've got to put you on the spot here to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Where along the way did you make that conscious decision of, yeah, I want to take on all of that responsibility. I want to be a business owner. I want to go deeper into all of these things, because I would imagine that for someone who has so much passion for trees and obviously the qualifications that you have, you enjoy doing the nature of the work that you're doing, pun fully intended, but also now you've taken on all this other stuff. What did that conscious decision look like? Is it something that you evolved into and took on that onus of business owner? I'd love for you to walk us into the mindset involved in that transition.
Yeah, it actually spurred from an injury. So I had gotten hurt at work a few years ago and did some pretty bad stuff to my spine, and that just didn't quite heal right. And so that actually partially prompted my leaving of the job that we moved here for. And so when this business started, I knew that I was kind of on a finite timeline of being able to do any physical labor, and I needed to get people in the door. And I didn't know how to manage all of that, but that was my focus was, I've worked a lot of places in my career that didn't take good care of their employees. And so I knew what I would want if I was to work for myself and if I was the boss of myself. And then I just strived to make sure that could happen for my constituents. And the first thing was like training, and then good equipment and a purpose. I mean, if you show up to work every day and you don't have a purpose, people are just lost. And so I started the company with that kind of mindset right from the beginning. And we were able to, we landed a city contract that helped quite a bit because it was work in the community that our people could see. And from there, it just it kept going. I mean, now we've got a registered apprenticeship and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, it was from that focus of like, I need to provide for myself by providing for other people.
Oh, I love the way you articulate that, Brandon. And to me, this is such a shining example of all the possibilities through entrepreneurship, because you started this and you're creating opportunities. You're creating impact through the nature of your work. You talk about that city contract. It actually kind of makes me want to geek out with you on a business level while we're together on the air about negotiating deals and securing partnerships and securing contracts and closing clients, that's complicated as it gets within the business world. A lot of us weren't trained in those regards, and especially if you didn't have any formal training in sales. I've always felt like a fish out of water when it comes to sales. I don't know if what I do is sales. I just kind of like show up as me and hope that I figure it out in those moments. But particularly when you're negotiating and discussing these opportunities with municipalities, with cities, I mean, these are traditional institutions that have a lot of bureaucracy involved at times. And obviously the nature of your work is deeply impactful. I mean, you are actually talking about working inside of nature that affects all citizens everywhere that they live. So Brandon, you've got to walk us through it's always fun to get that first story and then how that's evolved along the way. What did that look like for you to start securing clients?
It was pretty scary at first. I'm not gonna lie. Though, like, the city contract came up because I go to the local parks with my kids, and there was trees that were in really bad shape, and I'm like, this needs fixed. This is silly, and nobody was doing anything. So I started making calls, and I got my way up to the parks manager and was like, hey, I'm Brandon. We need to go talk. And I would say that a lot of our larger projects have worked out that same way. When I have time to work on the business, instead of just be in the business, I can reach out and just solve problems that I see. And I think that's probably one of the best parts of being able to sell work is, like, I'm not selling snake oil. I'm not selling things that don't have a tangible benefit. And I have a way and an expertise to bring that benefit to words that folks that aren't involved in trees might be able to understand. So, city commissioners and city councils and all those sorts of things. I mean, outside of that, it was just a marketing, which is overwhelming in itself because you can bury yourself pretty quick in calls, or it can be disheartening if you pull the wrong trigger. I mean, I've thrown tons of effort at things that probably shouldn't have, but we've gotten lucky with some other things.
Yeah, I want to go there. I'm so grateful for how willingly you're leading this conversation straight into the world of marketing, because Brandon, when I look at your business, I always think about such a key component of marketing is not talking about what we care about, but talking about what our prospects care about. And particularly in the work that you do, you called out city commissioners. So I'm just going to pick on them for a minute. City commissioners probably have 500 things that they care about at any given moment in time. What does your messaging look like? How are you shaping these conversations? I'm so curious because with so much on their plate, and I think this is something we can all borrow for our own businesses, is that our prospects have life going on, not just business going on. And so in a noisy world, what do those conversations look like for you to cut through that noise and really hone in on, hey, this is something you should pay attention to, and here's how we're going to make your city better, here's how we're going to make residents' lives better. What do those conversations look like?
Yeah, it generally starts from like a public safety standpoint. You go to any given city and there's going to be trees that are not well cared for, that could be dangerous. And so you find those things, you bring them some specific examples, and you write up a simple proposal, and it's like, hey, we've got these couple things at this park or along this boulevard that need addressed. It's a public safety concern. We have the tools and technology to go above and beyond that, or we can just solve the problem for you. And really, when you're able to approach these people and present them a problem that maybe they're aware of, maybe they're not, maybe once you mention it, they are aware of it now because they've kind of subliminally noticed it. And then you give them the solution and you go, hey, look, this was the problem. I can solve it for you and just take it off your plate. That tends to work pretty well. Of course, they're going to want certain information, but you want to distill that information into something that's really clean and cut, because like you said, these people are busy. They've got a lot going on, and they really don't care about what you have to say as long as it's keeping other people safe or money flowing, or whatever their notion of drive is for the position. I can't relate because I'm not a government guy, but I try to do what I do best, and that's keeping people safe and solving problems in regards to urban forestry.
Yeah, and speaking of solving problems, I think that one cool thing about when you are a problem solver is that people start to count on you and they start to lean on you. And Brandon, I would imagine in your line of work, it's not mostly one-off projects. It's people that realize, oh, Brandon, you can help us. Like, I'd love to integrate you as a normal person that we refer to, and a person that takes care of these problems. I live here in Tampa, right in the central urban part of it, and trees are part of why I love this city. I will argue until the day I die, Spanish moss makes a city look so cozy, and there's something about seeing Spanish moss on all these Florida trees that it just makes me feel at home these days, and it's something that I'm so used to. And the city is really incredible for us residents that we can log onto a portal if it's blocking a stop sign, because these things tend to happen. With beauty comes some costs as well, and so it's really cool that we can log on. And I don't really know, truth be told, Brandon, as just a resident and someone who's not in your world, I guess I take for granted what happens from there. How much of these partnerships and relationships with your clients turn into repeat business, or you become the guy that they turn to for all of their solutions? What does that look like when it comes to the client relationships?
Yeah, that's something that we've made a big push for this year, actually, because of course in the tree world, there's a lot of just hack and slash tree cutters that are one and done. They come in, they make a mess, they leave, and we do tree removal, but that's not the focus. The focus is, tree inventory. So figuring out what you have on your property, even landscape plants and stuff, and making a plan for you long term, and then going into how to make that plan what do you want to see long term, and then making that come to fruition. And framing those things from the beginning is, I'm finding that bit of honesty is really helpful, because everybody's busy, so they're all sorting through the fluff of mailers and email ads and whatever else that they're getting from everybody else that wants to come cut their trees down for a profit. And so developing that initial message, and then having had some of these higher end clients or municipalities and things, I would say that about half of our client base right now is either direct referral or repeat business. And that means showing up and doing more. You're not just going to show up and do the bare minimum job and leave. You want to show up and provide them the best that you possibly can. It's exhausting, especially like as the business owner, when you're already doing 120 hours a week and you just want to be home and it's dark. But you go above and beyond, and that's what shows. I mean, there's been times where something's gotten messed up and the person still calls us back to come do more work because we owned up to it. We did it right. We made it right. We fix it. I mean, that just is lacking in this world. Half the thing is just showing up.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's funny, in a world where it's never been easier than it is now to start a business, I actually think that the competition doesn't scare me, because the bar has gotten lower. That's what I found in the podcast world. There are more podcasts now than ever before, but the bar has gotten lower. So microphones are cheap. Anyone can start a business these days, but will you be consistent? Will you sustain over time? Will you just be real and authentic and have real valuable conversations? Brandon, like our guests show up without you don't know where I'm going to take the conversation. It's these raw, real conversations that people really appreciate when they tune into this. And I think that goes a long way. But I'm going to put you on the spot here, because I think it's from the outside looking in, I feel like it's one of your superpowers is when it comes to leadership. It's cool for the leader to be able to really embrace these things that you're sharing with us today. Over delivering, pride in your work, putting in that hard work. You as the owner and the founder, of course you have all of that, but instilling that in others without being a helicopter boss, without always hovering over what they're doing. What has that looked like as your business has evolved to make sure that these are the ethos that everyone on your team is really embracing?
Yeah, I would say giving people that purpose, first of all. So I guess we'll pick on like the fast food industry, where we can get grumpy when we don't have our fast food order correct. But look at what the purpose of that employee is and what their long-term view of that position is. The jobs that we create have identifiable long-term purposes. I mean, I can train someone from never having held a chainsaw up to my level and beyond. I have participated in climbing competitions. There's all sorts of different avenues within this industry that I want to provide for whoever comes on, whatever direction they want to go. And giving them that purpose to start tends to instill quality through intrinsic motivation. And then having those conversations with them, like you would with a spouse or a partner or your child, when you go, okay, what is the way that you feel loved and appreciated? You know, do you like gifts? Do you want to be told it? Do you want to hang out? Whatever it is. Identify those things, make sure that those people feel nurtured. And from there, work just as hard as they do. If you're sitting in the truck on your phone and they're out busting their ass and it's raining and you're doing a good job, that's not going to be the same as if you're out there nose to the grindstone doing it with them. And that's not going to be forever. I mean, I would consider us at coming up on like the adolescent stage of business, where, you know, we're evolving out of me having to be in the field all the time, and I have people that can start to really do the work that I expect. But I've had to show them that I can do it. And that's never going to stop, because I'm building managers, I'm building office leaders, I'm building people that want to own their own business. Part of this is I'm working on franchising. We want it to be turnkey. So these people that are coming up through our apprenticeship aren't just going to stop as a climber or whatever. I want them to turn into business leaders. I want them to have their own office where they can support a family and help other people grow. And recruiting those people, focusing on what motivates them, figuring out how to pay top wages and have the best benefits possible. It doesn't matter. It's just money. You just make it work. You identify those things and get it to work. And all of a sudden, people will help you move mountains.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Brandon, that is such powerful and aspirational advice that we can all look towards. I don't know how you're going to top that at the end when I ask you for your piece of advice for listeners, but before we get there, you brought up something that I've been so excited to explore with you here on the air together. You talked about not just being an entrepreneur and business owner, but you're also a dad and you're also a husband. And I want to go there with you here on the air, because we can't have this conversation without a big shout out to your wife, Kay, who obviously is so instrumental in you starting this business and in growing this business. And there's so many aspects of having a spouse, of being in a relationship as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, because let's face it, you and I both know from our own entrepreneurial journeys that it's not always rosy. There are so many challenges. There are so many days where you feel beat down, and it's so nice to have that other half that lifts you up, that encourages you, that supports you. And in your case, when that other person is also involved in the business with you, it's someone that you can really lean on. So talk to us about that aspect of it, because I'd love to get some real life stories about in those low moments. How do you push through those together? In those high moments, what does making decisions together look like? Give us some of those real life insights.
Oh yeah. I want to just do a quick shout out, because my wife is the most amazing person ever. We are literally expecting a baby anytime, and she is still doing everything that she has to do and be a mom and support me, and it's just amazing. She's the most amazing person. But yeah, I mean, those high and low moments, right? It can be in the same week. Really, the biggest thing is just talking. I mean, if you can't communicate, I mean, that goes for your constituents too, but if you can't communicate what's going on and because we each have different jobs at this point. You know, her job is a lot of the back end and the marketing and implementation of technology, because I'm not a tech person, and she deals with all that. And then coming together and making sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're working through it. And really, I guess it's just like a marriage. I mean, when she's at 60%, you try to give more to make sure that we can balance. And she's done a great job of that. I hope that I have done a good job. I try, but you know, it's a loaded question. I think love each other.
It is a loaded question, Brandon, but I also think it's part of your secret sauce and your superpowers as a business owner. I think that unlocks new levels in the way you think, the way you operate, the way you plan. I think that there's so many important aspects of that. And you know what, Brandon, I'm going to load this question even more. We're going to get even more personal, because just knowing so much about your story, there's so many ingredients of it that I personally resonate with. For example, I come from an immigrant family, and my mom is one of 8, 9, 10 kids. And so when they moved to the United States, none of them spoke a word of English, and they found it extraordinarily difficult. They didn't have money. They didn't have a lot of things. They didn't have access to the same things that me and my siblings, as first generation Americans, that we've had access to. However, in hindsight, I'm grateful for those values that have been instilled in us. I'm grateful for the hustle that it took for my mom's generation, and my dad, similarly. His family is very working class. They had to work for everything. And it's those values that were instilled in me that have now manifested in the way I operate. I'm willing to outwork most people, Brandon. It sounds like you're very similar there. Knowing that you and Kay, looking at your background, said, hey, we're going to have to, let's acknowledge where we came from, but let's instill those values into the way that we operate. Share some of that with our listeners, because I know how big of a part it is about the way that you see the world and the way that you think and the way that you act. I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Yeah, we both grew up pretty poor. She grew up in abject poverty, and basically dirt poor, educated herself, moved away, got her GED. I grew up pretty poor, hustled my way through school, through high school, barely graduated, and just have worked. I've worked my entire life, basically. I've spent more time at work than not at work. And yeah, I mean, that process of like, you have to get this done, otherwise you're not going to eat. You've got to strive and push. And like after COVID, I had gotten pretty sick, and we didn't quite know what to do. I had lost my job because I got sick and I couldn't work anymore. And we had to figure out what we could do, and our answer was going back to college. I've had numerous injuries, and while I'm injured, I go find another job. I mean, and I guess that is a big part of the company, and what we're trying to instill in our people is, it's showing up is half the battle. You still have to do it, and even if you're not making the progress that you want to do, you're still beating the person on the couch. You can't get anywhere if you don't start.
Brandon, I'm going to take that away from today's episode. I love that point that you just made. Even if things aren't progressing maybe at the pace that we hope, or maybe at the scale that we hope, you are so right that every single day of the week, we are kicking inaction's butt. And I think that is so important, that any action will always beat inaction. It's such an important mindset to have. And coming back to you and I both very much will echo all the high points, all the low points as entrepreneurs. It's these type of mindset things that we have to embrace and remind ourselves of, and of course show grace in those moments that get us through those things. And it's really cool hearing how you and Kay have managed to do that, I would imagine in your day-to-day lives, but especially in business together as well. So huge kudos to both of you. And like I said before we hit record together today, time's gonna fly by, and it most certainly has, but I'm gonna put you on the spot one last time with a super broad question. I ask it at the end of every episode, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? I feel like you've given us a lot of food for thought, from your executive mind, your business person's mind, just your straight up hustler mentality. So with all of that in mind and building on it, knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Care. I mean, as long as you're caring about what you're doing, even if your end goal is making money, or you are starting a nonprofit, or whatever it is, whatever spectrum of it, just care. We can look at the tech billionaire CEOs and stuff, and at the heart of their missions when they started, it was caring about a product or a service that they were providing. And if you put that effort in, if you genuinely give a hoot about what you're producing and how you're producing it and what the end product is for your consumer, it's going to work. There's just too often where people don't care and they're just trying to make some money, and that doesn't help anyone. people, especially this day and age, want to see why it's happening and that heart behind it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Brandon, so much of your approach to building an exceptional business, it really reminds me, and especially that parting advice that you're sharing with our audience, it reminds me of this graphic that seems to go viral on Facebook every year. And it's a picture. It must be like literally from the early 2000s or late 90s. It's just a picture of a whiteboard. And it's such a simple but profound graphic. And at the top on the whiteboard, someone wrote 10 things that don't cost you anything that will make a difference in your life. And it lists things like hard work, showing up, discipline, consistency, and you really emphasizing that point of care as your parting advice with all of us. It's free to care. And also increasingly, it's becoming rare to care. And Brandon, I think you're such a shining example of what it looks like to care about your clients, to care about your team, to care about the impact that you're making in the world. So I'm super appreciative of you sharing all of this with us here on the air today. I'm also very excited for people to check out Blue Pine Works. You're doing such cool work, not only with cities and municipalities, but homeowners, with landowners and commercial sites. So many cool things that you're doing through your work, and huge congrats to you and Kay for your third daughter on the way. So Brandon, for listeners who want to find all of your amazing work and all the cool things that you're up to, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, www.bluepineworks.com. Find us on Facebook, Blue Pine Works. We're on Instagram, Blue Pine Works. We're on LinkedIn, both just Blue Pine Works and me, Brandon Pankey. We're kind of everywhere. Yeah.
Heck yeah. And super easy. Blue Pine Works listeners, if you're going to forget it, then have no fear. We're also dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We're also linking to Brandon's personal LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out to him, that's actually how we came across his work and reached out to him and invited him to come on the show. So if you want to have an amazing entrepreneur in your network, do not be shy. Check out the links in the show notes. Otherwise, Brandon, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.